I'm live. I wish it said you're alive. Anyway, that's it. Let's see. I have never done this before on live, but let's see. Doesn't really matter because everyone's probably working and having a life or whatever. Making food by now. Chat messages will be flagged. What do they? Hold on. Hold potentially inappropriate messages. Not now. Whatever. I don't care what people say. All right. This is just I want to record because I really don't want to record it, then my phone has to upload it to my computer and all that stuff. All right, here's the last information I wanted to leave with benzo withdrawal. So probably like you've been doing the whole search for what is it, what can I do, what supplement can I take, what can I get over these things, blah, 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 blah. And so anyway, I decided to ask random people. I probably sounded like a weirdo, especially when people's like, no, and like they're looking at me weird. Like the barber, an x-ray tech, what else, a massage therapist. Just threw it out there, you know? And sometimes I'll just be more honest with people and I just tell them and they're like, oh yeah, I've taken that. All right, so here's which one do I want to do? The barber one's kind of quick and to the point. The barber, he looked like he was a little disheveled, but you know, very coherent, working and having no problems. And you know, and he just said, he's like, yeah, I just been just getting back to the work field. I went through a really hard time with this and that and this and that. I'm like, yeah, I got I said, yeah, did you ever take any medications for? He's like, I was on and he didn't know the word, and he's like trying to say Ativan's is Ativan lorazepam? I can't remember. Anyway, so I was like, oh wow, how long were you on it for? He goes, it's like forget how many years. And I'm like, were you taking it daily? He goes, yeah, probably in the end like 7 months straight of taking it daily. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, how long you been off? He goes, 7 months. I'm like, what? Like, you've been off 7 months. I'm like, really? I'm like, did you do any detoxing? Did you do? He's like, no, I just went through a lot of headaches and insomnia, and you know, it was rough, and you know, and a lot of pain, you know. And I was like, okay. So then finally I'm like, you did nothing else? And he's like, yeah, it took a while, you know, and then it finally stopped, and you know, it got a little bit better, and the headache went away. And I was like, fascinating. I said, did you try any therapies or stuff? He's like, well, I went to see a therapist, you know, and had to talk a lot of stuff out. And I'm like, you know, I had to let go of a lot of things. And I'm like, all right. Anyway, so here's a guy. He's functioning. He's going to work. Then here's the one I hated the most. I was buying something online and trying to just alleviate anxiety, blah, blah, blah. So this guy, I think his name was Chris. So he's like, yeah, it helps with anxiety. He helped me. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, did you ever take anything for anxiety? Sure enough, guess what he took? He took Ativan. And I was like, oh wow. I'm like, he's like, I've been on it for 12 years. I'm like, okay. Like, what did you do? Of course, he says CBD oil. He was taking edible CBD. He was taking it by Imbued, IMBUED company, the edibles. He was like the pills or whatever, I guess. He says it was helping with sleep, helps with a lot of stuff. I said, so how long have you been off? 2 months. I'm like, you've been off Ativan 2 months and you've been on it for that long? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, what did you feel? He's like, oh my God, it was the worst 2 months of my life. I'm like, the worst 2 months of your life. I'm like, try 16. I'm like, try 5 for some other people. And I'm like, so then I started thinking, I'm like, okay, there's more to the story. What's your story? and I realized that everyone's got a story, and that's the problem. It's the story that's behind the withdrawal that kind of helps certain people. And I believe there's a genetic problem too. Genetics, some people are just like, whoa, you're awesome. And awesomely strong. You can get through things. You can go through things. And all of a sudden it's like, you can jump in a pool of bleach and come out perfectly fine. The other people melt. Anyway, talking too fast and I get lightheaded. All right. Next one. Let me see. I should say the best for last. All right. So I brought up the barber. I brought up the clerk. The massage therapist. I'll save for last. Who's the other one? Oh, okay. So the MRI tech. So when I was there, of course, I'm freaking out, and I was about month 14 off, maybe, of Xanax, Valium, and I never took it every single day until the end for maybe about 4 months straight, 2 months straight. But anyway, so her husband died. She went through a big, huge crisis and stuff, and now that suffering loss is suffering loss. You have to deal with that. However, she was on also Ativan. 6 years? 6 is coming to my mind. And I was like, how'd you get off? She's like, I went through a brutal detox. I had to get my bleep out of bed, and I had to fight through it, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and how are you now? She goes, she's like, I still use it. She's like, I'll still use it maybe once every so many months. It depends on the situation or what comes up. I'm like, but you're functioning. You can go dancing. You can what? I mean, occasional drink. She's like, well, I choose not to drink, but I was like, okay. So she got over her grief. She got over her thing. So 3 and 3, everyone got over their thing. And now my favorite one. There's more. I just can't remember them right now. The favorite one's the massage therapist. So I warned the girl. I said, sometimes I get a little anxious, and I, especially when I'm just like, when I feel trapped, I get anxious. And she's like, understood, and I said, I'm going through like a withdrawal, and I was always honest with people because I always want someone to say something. She was like, I know withdrawal. She's like, I know it very well. I'm like, oh, you know what? That's what happened. I didn't say anything. She had a book, psychology book. I'm like, oh, you're studying psychology. That's right. Then she brought up, and I said, like, yeah, I've been studying that, and then I brought up that whole Xanax thing. So anyway, I'm asking her, I'm like, how long have you been on it? She's like, well, I did heroin and Xanax. I'm like, so how did you stop? She goes, I went to jail. I'm like, you were in jail through a heroin Xanax withdrawal? She goes, yep. She's like, I was forced off it. I was like, how in the world, in that environment, did you get through? She's like, I sweat and chattered my teeth. I forget how long she said. It was just the number of months for her, and she got better. And I was like, and she's like, now I'm studying psychology. I want to help people. She's like, she has 2 kids. She's married. Everything's perfectly fine. I'm like, this ain't happening. I'm like, okay. So now that I realize there is a brain factor to all of it. End of story. And I think it's all neuroplasticity. It's what you think of the most is what brands in your brain. And if you channel fear, you think fear, you have fear, you stay in fear. If you go into a life of, like, we talk about distractions, and I say it in my part 3 video about distractions are good when you're going through those moments, and distractions are very important. But if you start living a life of only distractions, you start distracting yourself from life, neuroplasticity, you start creating this life of distraction, play a game, draw a picture, watch TV, and all of a sudden life is escaping you, and you forget what life is, and you forget how to challenge yourself. And then that's another problem. right? So what I found common in those 4 people, I forget what the other people were. Oh, older woman. She did Xanax, then she did Buspar, and then she came off. So I don't know if the Buspar helped her, but she came off and then she stopped and never went back to it. But so, but I found that all of those 5, actually, I'll just add her, they all just did some kind of like facing their fear. And I think that was it. Like it was like they're facing their fear. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a wimp. I don't face my fears. I run from them, depending on what they are. It's like I'm supposed to get an MRI, and I'm reluctant to get it. So I think that, just to end this, I think this will be I'm really not going to focus on benzo withdrawal anymore. I don't want to focus on it anymore. It's like, it's a period, you go through it, but you got to function through it. You got to, easier said than done. And I think the problem is what's your trauma? What's my trauma? My trauma is different than your trauma. And that's why I find you got people who are really suffering versus those who are not suffering as much. Like there's some who can still function, like one guy he was still working through the whole withdrawal. Jeez, and that's, I find it's like the people who have like some who have like parental duties or whatever the case is, like they get up and go to work. They get up and do their thing. It's because like they have to. So like kind of like that enforced facing fear, or face that sensation and say like, I got work to do, Anyway, so that's why I'm going to be focusing on more. But I do have cervical issues. I mean, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be chasing down a lot of that because I have more than what a benzo withdrawal sufferer will have, like, the neck, the spine, the tension, the head pressure, the drop attacks, which again comes from anxiety. It does. Do I want to get an MRI? No. But my orthostatic issues are just so severe, more than what a benzo withdrawal suffers. The pain that I have and the clunking noises that I have here, more than someone else suffers. And cerebral spinal fluid leaks carry this very similar symptoms and more of benzo withdrawal. Cervical instability, same thing. Forward head posture, reverse curve of your spine can cause the same very similar symptoms, which is why a lot of doctors put people on Xanax in the first place, because there's like, you have anxiety, it's like, but it was coming from cervical. People get cervical epidurals, you get a cerebral spinal fluid leak, you get nasty sensations. But whatever, I don't know. It is a chasing, hopefully not after the wind, but sometimes that's what you do, is you catch wind first and you're like, all right, it's not that, moving on to the next thing. But like I always say, make sure it's only benzo withdrawal. We were put on it for a reason. If it was for a psychological reason, understood, maybe that's your only deal, then focus on facing that fear, worry, what if life, and challenge them, fight it, get through it, and it's only going to be from your strength. It's going to be, from your ability to start it, to start pushing through it. If it was because of just sensations that came out of nowhere, then maybe it's time to look at the neck. Maybe it's time to look at and some people do. I know they get imaging and they don't see anything, but the problem is with imaging, like chasing a CSF leak, MRI of the brain with contrast first. Then if there's no signs of fluid collection or fluid obstruction of things of that nature, then they move on to see whether or not the spine, God forbid, I don't want a CT myelogram, but that would be the next thing. That's about it. As far as cervical instability, it's like, you'll know when you're laying on a pillow, the way it's sensations, the way you feel, like just pressing in here. It's like it's a nasty sensation. I can stand up like I always do, and once I stand up, automatically I get this syncope, passing out drainage feeling like that, and then I have to hold on to the side, and then my pressure has to slowly regulate, It's really nasty. So, then after a while, it depends on certain things I do that can actually, I think what I did yesterday was I might have sprung the leak. So made me want to take Valium because it makes you panicky, it makes you worry, you start freaking out because your brain is now not enough cerebral spinal fluid floating around, or sometimes you can go the opposite into cranial hypertension. And that's where you see that like your head's going to explode out of your head. And the last thing I can say is I find in groups in Facebook that I've been in, like there's a cranial hypotension group, there's Chiari malformation, cerebral spinal fluid leak groups, and would you believe many people I asked them if had they ever been on a benzodiazepine, because they were saying all the same symptoms that all we say, that we all talk about, and they're like, never. And I'm like, never. So that's why I always say make sure it's definitely just benzo withdrawal, which it's never just benzo withdrawal because we went on it for a reason. We have to figure out, was it because of a chemical problem like a mold toxicity, some other type of toxicity, chemical, physical? Is it a physical problem like I'm talking about, or is it an emotional problem? And those are the things we got to face: physical, chemical, emotional. We got to find the root cause and not focus so symptom wise, but be solution wise. Be solution focused, not symptom focused. But when you're in the middle of a symptom, do what you got to do to get through it. Just say, okay, this day's going to suck. I just got to get through it because you can't act. You're just not going to be able to act. But try not to give. Me, I'd give into the feeling and I'd be like, I can't do nothing, and that's where I left it. So, all righty. I'm going to leave it now. Hopefully I was loud enough. Everybody can hear me, but I guess I'll listen to it now. And I think that's going to be my last video, honestly. If I come up with any kind of amazing thing and find out something amazing, then I'd definitely share it. But I might be doing videos next, which will be labeled as cervical instability stuff if I find out stuff about that. So if you don't have neck problems and you've been there, done that, you've never had epidurals, you don't have EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is where you have that very flexibility. Now, I'm close. This is called close. Now, most people are like way out here. Now, this side, I can't go. I can't get that far. So my figure was, since I play guitar, this finger is always I've always stretched these fingers out because I can lift this high, but I've stretched these fingers out all the time doing splits, doing that. But this one, I can't go that high. Oh, all right, maybe I can. Getting there. I did martial arts, so I stretched out a lot, so. But EDS in itself causes a lot of heart problems. Let me just say can, because it's a connective tissue disorder. Cause a lot of cerebral spinal fluid problems. You get an epidural having EDS, you risk a massive CSF leak, especially women will know that one. Those type of, like that epidural steroid injections, which are horrible for benzo withdrawal anyway. But if they come close to the dura enough where it's like nicked, pricked, go too far, cerebral spinal fluid leak, you get this tiny leak, and you don't get all the crazy massive symptoms of CSF leak. You get partial, and you just feel uneasy, you feel messed up, and you get slight pressure, massive pressure here, caving in pressure here. You might get the weird acid feeling in the brain, like on your scalp. So that's where I'm going to be talking about in other videos. So I'll be labeling them. So as I mentioned, going forward, keep an eye on the theme of my thing. So unless someone needs me to research something, I'd do it. I mean, I got time on my hands right now, but yesterday I thought I was going to be in the ER. It was really, really bad. Like I was forgetting things. Like, not what I mean by forgetting things. It was like I was doing things, I'd sit down, and it would be like it was just a dream. And that's another cerebral spinal fluid problem. that you get this disorientation and you feel like you're just living in a dream state. So what can you do? All right, 20 minutes. I went 5 minutes over. So farewell, and hopefully maybe this stuff might shed some light on the fact that there is no direct solution as far as taking a pill that's going to make you ride the storm easier, because you have to remember that the amygdala was retrained by whatever we are. Because my natural fears, I did not work on what I needed to before I came off of Xanax, and therefore what was there was those fears were still there, the worries were still there, and I couldn't get past it. I couldn't, because now I had nothing working. I had no GABA, sorry, making anyone dizzy. So, yeah. So we'll see what my future brings now. I mean, the epiphanies mean nothing unless you put the work into it. And you know what happens when you get fear. I don't want to do anything. So, all right. Take care.